Good afternoon and welcome to today's Top Tips webinar. My name is James Evely and I'm the editor of In Publishing. The format of the webinar is very straightforward. Andre will make a 20-minute presentation which will be followed by a 10-minute Q&A. To take part in the Q&A, simply type your question into the panel in front of you at any time. I will then collate the questions and put as many of them as possible to Andre after his presentation. I won't read out the names of the people asking the questions, just the questions themselves. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you straight over to Andre.
Thank you, James. So first and foremost, a very good afternoon, and thank you all for taking time away from your busy schedule to join us for the next 20-30 minutes. So the goal of today is to leave you with 5 ways you can use CRM in order to drive a better performance from your advertising sales teams. So just to kick things off, some background. So my name is Andre Galinha, and I head the medium publishing business for Workbooks. I spent the last 20 years selling technology into mid-sized businesses and help them understand how to realize value from that technology. As for Workbooks, we are a provider of cloud-based CRM and business applications with a strong base amongst mid-sized publishers. We typically become the engine that powers both the audience management and the advertising, events, and subscription sales function for our publishing customers, giving you a seamless workflow from the moment you define your inventory to the moment you get your invoices paid by your customers. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we'll be looking at 5 ways you can use CRM to drive better advertising sales performance. Those are empowerment, transparency, efficiency, gamification, and employee experience. So let's get started with empowerment. Empowerment. So what exactly do we mean by this? We all look for similar things when hiring for new salespeople. We want them to be proactive, self-motivated, hungry for success, and willing to go the extra mile. However, we've seen too many cases where those individuals are then put into this straitjacket of rules, can't do's, never do's, which just deprives them of all of their energy. Good salespeople perform better when they feel empowered to do what it takes in order to reach their goals. So how can CRM help you create that environment for your team? So let's look at 3 practical examples of how CRM can help you empower your sales team to drive better conversions, larger sales, and faster closes. The first one is lead scoring. Empower your team with the data they need in order to prioritize their prospecting efforts. Through a lead scoring program, taking into account both interest and fit, your team can then decide which prospects and customers to target first, knowing they are more likely to be successful. And while we can run an entire day session just on the subject of scoring, let me just leave you with a few pointers. You should mix both interest and fit into your score, or even consider scoring them independently. Interest is typically displayed by a customer or prospect's behaviors that make them more likely to buy from you, whether that's a media pack download or the simple fact they have advertised with you on a specific edition in the past. Fit is about determining which are the higher potential prospects and customers, taking into account things like which industry they operate in, how big they are, and how much they've previously spent with you. If you create an A-B score for fit and interest, your team can then start prioritizing their efforts into AA customers and prospects, the ones that have a high potential and they have shown interest in your services, and stop wasting time with the BBs, the ones who have no interest and no potential whatsoever. Now, moving on to audience data, In today's digital world, customers expect to be able to determine ROI, return of investment figure, for every investment they make. And they probably have some kind of system in place in order to track it. So if you bear that in mind, do your sales teams have the data to show the value of their proposition to their customers? Let's take a real life scenario here. So your sales rep calls into one of his top accounts. He's told they are strategically moving into a new market and want to know if you can help them raise awareness of their brand within that market. They then go on to provide you with the typical persona they want to target. Now, can your salesperson address it on the spot, sharing the size and engagement level of the customer's intended audience with your brand? Or does he need to say, let me get back to you, losing the momentum of that conversation and that deal in the process? In a digital first world, we need to back our words with data, and we need that data at our fingertips when required. Previous campaign results. So if that conversation is happening with a regular customer, how can you show and prove the value you've created for them? Is your sales team equipped with the results of previous campaigns you've run for them in order to demonstrate real value and help drive a bigger engagement with the client? In a world where more and more channels compete for the same or lower advertising budget, you need to be able to provide evidence of the value you bring to the table. There are many more ways in which CRM can enable the empowerment of your team, but you should sit down with them and ask the question, what can we do to empower you to deliver better results? The bottom line is that an empowered team is a more successful team, and CRM is a key enabler of that empowerment. So that leads us into the second point today, which is transparency. Every advertising sales team have KPIs intended to drive specific behaviors that will, in the end, make it more likely the team hits the numbers in a consistent and predictable way. Whether those are activity-based metrics, number of calls, time on the phone, number of customers touched in a week, or business value metrics. Pipeline value, pipeline stage, probability of close, the makings of your forecast. Now, how confident do you feel that each member of your team has easy access to those metrics for themselves and the team, so that they can know how they're performing both individually and against their peers? CRM can help you. By its very nature, CRM is perfectly positioned to drive transparency across the business. Here's how. Real-time activity and results metrics. With deal cycles varying across different publishers from hours to weeks or months, it's not enough to know how I have performed at the end of the week, month, or quarter. By giving everyone real-time access to their and the team's KPIs, not only you're empowering your team members to take ownership of their own performance, but you're also creating a healthy, competitive environment based on real actual data. Now, is it clear for everyone in your team who's the owner of each account or deal? Or is it something that might be open to discussion, even sometimes behind closed doors, and potentially increasing the risk of creating a perception of unfairness? CRM can enable everyone to know at the tip of their fingers exactly who owns which accounts and deals, promoting a perception of a level playing field and giving you the data you need to address any imbalances you might have on your account allocation rules. And full activity visibility. Have we sent that proposal? Have we followed up on that deal? Have we responded to that email from the prospect? In many cases, the answer to these questions will not only have an impact on productivity, which we'll address next, but also give people the ability to somehow hide away their failings. By combining the full visibility awarded by CRM with a culture of personal improvement rather than one of recrimination, you can create an environment where there's no place to hide, while at the same time giving the tools to each individual for them to manage their own performance. If you want a competitive and fair team on a level playing field with no place to hide, CRM can be a key enabler to actually get you there. Efficiency. I think we have lost count of how many publishers we engaged with where their sales team was spending less than half their time actually selling. Maybe because booking an order was so difficult, or knowing what was going on with your customer meant having to go to someone else's desks and interrupt what they were doing, or just because they didn't have the tools to manage their own workload. So how can CRM help you get your team back into selling? Many things can impact on our daily productivity, but these are the three aspects we recurrently hear from our publisher, customer, and prospects. So let's start with order booking. How difficult is it for your sales team to get an order booked and over to production? How many times does production need to come back to the sales team to clarify what has been sold or ask for help in chasing creatives? By using CRM, you can enable a fully automated order booking system. That means the rep can easily quote for his deal, including what is it that he's selling, mapping any print adverts to the right publication and issue, or identifying who the right contact is to chase creatives. You can then get the customer to sign it digitally and then move on to the next deal in the confidence the system will take care of getting that deal assigned to the right team or person in production, chasing the copy, and making sure in the end his commissions get paid, giving him more time to actually go and sell. However, with all the goodwill in the world, problems will arise and will need to be managed. Otherwise, we could just automate everything and dispense with human intervention altogether. Problems with creatives not being delivered on time, despite our best efforts, customers changing their plans, customers calling and saying, well, actually, we're delaying this campaign, so I don't want this to go live this month, I want it to go live the next month, etc. If you give everyone visibility into what was agreed with the customer, what the actual problem now is, and who's responsible for owning it, you can assure that more time is being spent on actually addressing and solving any issues and problems that might arise, rather than actually try to find out what the issue is and who's supposed to be dealing with it. And finally, let me ask you a question. So it's Monday morning and you're having breakfast while picking through your Outlook, trying to see what you have planned for the week. How confident are you that there are no hidden issues you'll have to address, but that are not known to you? How much time are you spending just making sure things are going as planned rather than actually addressing your priorities? CRM can enable you to move your business into autopilot mode, meaning you and everyone else in the business can focus on carrying on with their roles and let technology do the heavy lifting of alerting you if something's amiss. The workflow automation, task management, and reporting capabilities of a modern CRM are a key enabler for increasing efficiency across not only your sales team, but actually the whole business. Gamification. Well, yes, a bit of a buzzword, we all know that, but the actual science behind it is solid. We humans naturally react to the chemical-induced pleasure of winning in any sort of game. As a salespeople, we know we need to hit a number by the end of a certain period, month, quarter, year. But what some of us struggle with, especially if we're just starting at the beginning of our career, is to actually join the dots between the everyday behaviors, make that call, send that quote, target that prospect, and the end result of hitting our number. So how can we use this to drive our sales team? CRM and gamification can be powerful allies in driving those behaviors, while at the same time creating a stronger and more engaged team. Pleasure is a powerful motivator, but it's also a very short-lived one. The smokers amongst us know that many times the quick dopamine burst of that cigarette makes it very difficult to keep the big picture of our long-term health in mind. So how can we use that same process to drive everyday dopamine bursts to our team that will actually help them achieve the long-term goal of hitting their sales targets? By mapping out what the right daily, weekly behaviors are that drive long-term success, you can then create engaging competitions in the team that give them small rewards for displaying those behaviors. Over time, those behaviors will turn into habits, which will drive higher sales performance. With a well-implemented CRM, we should be able to drive those competitions based on any metrics: phone activity, client profile, quote sent, pipeline generated, conversion rates, you name it. By experimenting with different metrics, targets, and rewards, you can find what the right mix is for your team to make sure everyone feels engaged and part of the team's success. And if you mix individual with team level targets, you'll be building a sense of collective success and ultimately a stronger team. CRM-enabled gamification will drive the right behaviors while building a stronger and more engaged team, which will drive more sales and revenue. Which brings us to the last topic for today, employee experience. We hear this from publishers all the time. Finding, recruiting, and retaining the right talent is hard work. And financial motivation in the form of commissions and bonus is proving not to be enough anymore to make sure you have the best. So what role can CRM play in helping you secure the right salespeople in your team? CRM can have a major impact on how sales professionals perceive the quality of their jobs. Working is where we spend most of our time, so if that time is rife with frustration, that will eventually impact both on my performance and my job satisfaction. A well-structured CRM implementation will look at your sales team and determine how we can make their lives easier by taking the guesswork out of their day. Back to the point made earlier under efficiency, let the system take over and guide your workload, enabling you to escape the rat race of constantly worrying about what have I not done or am I missing something. The transparency enabled by CRM also helps people feel accountable and responsible for delivering on their work, creating a closer relation between my performance and the outcomes for the company, which will invariably lead to an increased sense of loyalty and drive better retention. And finally, the new talent pool coming to the market has grown up on a fully digital environment. So they expect their workplace to be fully digital as well, and will act as your best ambassador and recruiter if you provide them with a world-class digital employee experience that can be provided by a CRM. People are the key asset of your sales team, and you need them to be successful. But the same way a great driver can't win with a poorly performing car, your sales team can't win without a highly performing CRM. So, summarizing what we discussed today before we open up for questions. CRM can help you empower your sales team so that they feel motivated and enabled to deliver their best work, drive accountability by enabling full transparency, improve efficiency by making sure time is being spent on added value activities and that you are automating low value and or repetitive tasks, build a stronger team and push the right behavior through gamification, and deliver an outstanding employee experience, which will help you retain and hire the best talent in the market. So that's all from me today. Over to James, who I believe has some questions from our audience.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Andre. First of all, first one up is are the interest and fit parameters as part of a lead scoring subjective or objective markers, would you say? And typically, how do they impact the sales conversion rates?
Well, so two questions there, subjective versus objective, and how they impact the conversion rates. So taking the first one, I'll say, as part of the model, they have to be objective. So, and you need to define, so to give you an example of fit, if customer is on industry A versus industry B, we know industry A is a better fit for us, so we'll give it a higher score. However, they are, I wouldn't say subjective, but definitely specific to each business. And there's no silver bullet, and actually implementing a lead scoring strategy is not a one-off activity. You need to define a framework on which you're going to implement, make some assumptions, implement it, and then just use the data available to refine it and iterate with it over time. In terms of the impact it might have on conversion rates, I must confess I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but there's plenty of evidence from multiple entities. I'll suggest looking at the research done by Serious Decisions, for example, that a lead scoring model can have a multiplier effect on the amount of pipeline that progresses through your funnel.
Okay, excellent. Another one for you, Andre. I'm a one-person publishing company and a one-person sales team. I need a CRM system, but how can I apply your gamification suggestion to work for me?
Well, that's a very, very good question. I guess you have the benefit of not having to guess. You know what makes you drive more than anyone else. So in the same way that when you have personal challenges around motivation, etc., one of the recommended methods or tools to deal with that is to define own personal rewards. Do that for yourself. Okay, so define what you want to get achieved in a day, and give yourself a reward for achieving that. It will trigger your sense of satisfaction and will allow you to come to the end of the day with a feeling of I've actually achieved something, rather than being focused on the never-ending list of things you still have to do.
Okay. Andre, sales teams often struggle to keep CRMs up to date. What tips do you have to combat this?
Absolutely, and adoption is key. A poorly adopted CRM is a useless CRM, because if you don't have the data there, then there's nothing we can do about it. And I think where I see most CRMs failing is on actually getting the involvement of the sales team and understanding what's in it for them. And that's why I mentioned things like a personal improvement culture versus a recrimination culture. In many ways, CRM is typically seen by sales teams as a control tool that serves no other purpose than recriminating them for not doing something. So it's absolutely key to work with the sales team and understand, one, what's in it for them. So what can CRM provide to make your job easier and to make you more likely to achieve your targets, and to review the balance from a user experience perspective. I see too many CRMs where salespeople have to fill in 50 different fields when creating an opportunity, and when questioned why, the only answer is, well, because they're nice to haves. Well, if they're nice to haves, but they're impacting on your sales team ability to be productive, maybe you shouldn't have them. So start slowly, or if you already started, bring it almost back to the beginning. Put in and request the basics from the sales team and collaborate with them on finding and striking the balance between their needs as a user and the business needs from a reporting perspective.
Okay. With regard to empowerment, is there a downside to giving salespeople access to all this data?
Well, I'm not sure there's a downside, but definitely there are concerns. If I think about the most common concerns I hear, those have to do with competitiveness and data privacy. Okay, so starting with competitiveness, and this is at its very bottom is a culture question. Well, I don't want my sales team to be able what other sales individuals are working on, because I know then they'll spend more time trying to figure out what others are working on rather than doing their job. Well, I recognize the concern, but in the nicest possible way, CRM will highlight if that's the case. And if you have someone whose contribution to the company culture is spending all their time looking at what someone else is doing rather than trying to achieve his targets, then you probably need to have a think on whether that's the right culture you want to drive. On your sales teams. And CRM will provide you with the data to be able to tell who's doing what, who's not. To address the second side of that, which is data privacy, another one is, well, no, we don't want to give everyone access to our data because we're afraid they might go away to a competitor and take that with them. Well, modern systems have plenty of controls to help you not only monitor, but actually stopping people from walking out of the door with their data. So I think, if anything, is quite the opposite. By making sure you have a well-implemented and well-adopted CRM, you'll make sure that when one of your sales rep walks out of the door, you keep the data of the clients he was working on, rather than having those clients walk off the door with him.
Okay. Andre, another question. We are not sure our systems and processes will support all this. Where do you suggest we start?
Well, I think start at the beginning, and what I mean by this is you probably need to start by taking, rather than trying to force and make your current setup work, you probably need to take a step back and ask yourself, is my current setup still fit for purpose? And there are many reasons why systems become unfit for purpose. They might be unfit from the get-go, if you make the wrong decision, the wrong implementation. It might be that your business model and your business has moved over time and you haven't made the necessary changes to those systems, or maybe they're they're quite old and not making the most of modern technology. But my advice will be, take a step back, look at what the business is trying to achieve over the next 12, 24, 36 months, map out how CRM can help you achieve those goals, and then score your current system and probably go out to market and look at what else is there against your requirements in order to achieve those goals. So we have a very well-defined process to take customers through their journey. So if you want a bit more detail and discuss your particular case, don't hesitate to contact us.
Okay, brilliant. Andre, time for a couple more, I think. Can you provide a real-world example of how CRM-led gamification has improved sales performance?
Well, yes, and actually, I can use ourselves as an example. We recently restructured our business development team. So this is a team basically an inside sales telephone-based team, and they're tasked with taking our lead flow and progressing that into a live opportunity. So we introduced a number of elements around gamification. So to give you an example, the guys have a target. If they hit their activity targets for the week on Friday, at whatever time it might be, they're free to go home. We've seen an increase in activity from the BDR team of around 30%.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. That's a very good example. Andre, time for the last one now. Can you give me an example of one of your customers where CRM has driven, better employee experience and delivered a measurable impact on productivity and retention?
Yes, I can. And obviously, I can't mention names. So if someone wants to explore that further and have a one-to-one conversation, we're more than happy to facilitate it. But I can think of two. I can think of two examples actually. One who has been live with us for about 12 months. They are a subscription-based business based in the city of London, and before they adopted us, they were experiencing about 2 times higher staff turnover than they are since adopting us. Right? And they had a specific issue where people would leave the business and name CRM and the tools they were working on as one of the main reasons why they were leaving the business. Another case, mid-sized publisher doing events and advertising across multiple industries based in Kent. And they have another problem, which is they have a multitude of brands, and each brand was operating on their own separate system. So they have a constant state of almost war amongst the sales teams, because they were effectively different people were trying to target the same accounts without knowing that someone else for another of the brands was already engaged with them. So after we brought them across and we consolidated the 6 brands into a single environment, not only have they been able to control that environment, because now there's full visibility, everyone knows what's happening with their accounts, but also they found out another thing, is that by having completely disparate systems, they actually had no idea of how much each customer was worth for them. And they actually found out there were a number of accounts that were being worked across multiple brands and whose value was significant enough for them to restructure the sales team and create a key account management function that could look after those top accounts across the different brands.
Andre, thank you very much. I think we're just past 3 o'clock, so I think we've got to wrap things up. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, James, and thank you all for spending the time today.
I think it was a fascinating presentation. A recording of today's webinar will be available soon, and we will email you a link to it sometime tomorrow afternoon. We will be publishing more information about forthcoming webinars on our website shortly, and we have one lined up for November, so please do look out for that. Until next time, though, thank you very much for listening, and have a very good afternoon.